Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me give a shout out to S Jacques for coming through in the Cash App in support of the live stream, I think, from the bottom of my black heart, from the depth of my black mind. Thank you so much. I mean that. This is two subjects I want to cover. Mostly one, but I'll start with the smaller and shorter topic first. I'm not going to join Mr. Sperling in celebrating or even breathing a sigh of relief at the deportation of black immigrants. As a whole, they have not set up and said our culture is superior. Now, they have set up and said some of the same things that Mr. Sperling has said. They've said, well, we didn't have taken away from us what you had taken away from you. You lost a lot. You had a lot of things just snatched away from you that we didn't. And we had things snatched away from us that you didn't. But we've had the same enemy. Most Africans I've met have been this way. I've not come across a whole lot of effery. I will say that I've been to parties with West Africans and some East Africans that joined in. Before I was Muslim, and there was one guy from Tanzania, I believe. Always a nice fellow, very Pan-African, but when he got drunk, he was a major bitter pill to swallow. I mean, he was offensive to everybody when he got drunk. He offended the Liberians. He walked in on a couple that was screwing. He started calling me a cracker. But he would say whatever was offensive to anybody. He didn't single me out except for the type of insult. He had another insult for the Liberians because they were prolific fornicators. And so he just walk in on them if he could. He didn't remember any of the stuff when he sobered up. I'm not going to sit up and tell you that he was like this all the time. I'm also going to tell you that a bunch of other people had more to drink than him, and they were still polite. Liberians have looked me square in my face, gotten a good look at me, and taken me as one of their own. That's Liberians for you. I have met Nigerians from the north that have done the same. I've met some from the middle who have done the same. I come across some of the Southerners, and even the Southerners don't just have a habit of walking around being divisive. The Yorubas that I've met have not been this way. It was specifically one particular linguistic group. And they were pretty much, like I said, they would be jerks to anybody. This whole notion of the stereotype of the African just going to the U.S. and then talking down on black folks is not true. How do I know? From having been close friends with them in Atlanta, I've gone when some of their relatives finally arrive in the United States. I've gone with them to the airports, picked them up, and I've seen some of them in their lives from the time they land. And while they might get a scholarship that a university gives them, because Morehouse would give some of them would give scholarships to some of them. Morehouse would do that, looking out for other Africans. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that they got a bunch of governmental handouts. No, a black institution was willing to help them with scholarships while I was there and even afterwards. Some black churches were willing to help them out, but I would be lying if I sat up here and told you that they landed in the States and they got a bunch of handouts. See, the ones who get a bunch of handouts are different from the ones that are being deported. And Africans weren't getting a lot of handouts like that. I'm not going to join Mr. Sperling in celebrating that deportation because he himself has said, no, I'm not going to sit up and say that we Native Americans and no, we came from Africa, but y'all sold us. Well, the Africans that are alive today, it's like this. If we're not going to walk around bashing white folks for this, okay, fine. What about the Africans that are alive today? Are they not victims like we were? They lost us like we lost them. They don't look at the history books and read them and say, oh, that's great. We got rid of those niggas over there. If they really felt this way, they wouldn't migrate to the States to make a living. I met a Fulani man from Ethiopia once. They're called a Falata just in Ethiopia like they are in the Arabic speaking countries. I remember when I met this man and he said, and this is back in the 2010s when he and I had this conversation. And he said, why are some African Americans mad? And I told him, bruh, I don't know about African Americans as a whole being mad. I know about uneducated ghetto niggas being mad at everybody. I know about that. Some of them. Some of them are just mad at no matter, they're mad at everyone. They mad at me because I ain't from the hood. Don't act like it. They mad at you because you ain't from the States. They're mad at a Jamaican. They're mad at somebody just like them, but from a different hood in a different state. So if you're talking about them, okay, well, yeah, they'll insult anybody. But if you're talking about African Americans as a whole, we don't know a lot about Africa, but we don't walk around just mad at y'all. We hear stuff about you that's not true. But even then, we don't just walk around mad at y'all any more than you walk around just mad at us. And he said, no, man, some have argued. And I looked around and I said, well, in this neighborhood, I'm not surprised. But look where you are. But in the end, he said, I don't even understand the anger because we're not walking around saying that you're not us and we're not you. And our kids, when they grow up, they're going to be with you, even if we didn't want them to be. And I said, yeah, I guess that's true. We're going to absorb the children of our own people that came directly from back home willingly. That would be the case if we migrated back home more so, we'd probably be absorbed too. As the children learn the local languages and our form of English simultaneously, I think they would be absorbed as well. When you look and sound exactly like somebody else, you get absorbed amongst them. That is generally true. You have Arabs in Latin America who don't even know how to speak Arabic, but their Spanish is completely 100% of whatever local variety is spoken where they live. They have Arabic last names. And they're completely absorbed amongst the Latin Americans. Selma Hayek is one of them. I want that to be remembered and thought about. That is very true in general. To those whoever talk smack, talk down on African Americans, probably talk down on everybody else too. I've heard a Sierra Leonean say that Jamaicans are a lost people, but he said, but they're our people. And I asked him, well, what do you mean by they're lost? And he said exactly what it means whenever anybody's lost. They don't know exactly which parts of Africa they come from, just like African Americans don't know. They weren't allowed to know. But in certain things that they do, in the way they act, and even in the ways that they speak, I can hear the Sierra Leonean Creole in their patois. I can tell that we're related. These are my cousins. This is a Sierra Leonean Muslim who said this. He was Timni. He made mention of how it was that when Jimmy Cliff visited Freetown decades ago and someone snatched Jimmy Cliff's chain, he was on the radio lamenting about it because he didn't think, that type of crime wasn't going on back in Sierra Leone. He would have expected that in Kingston, but not Sierra Leone. And he said, I didn't travel all the way back home. And most Sierra Leoneans sympathized with him. And they said, most of us would never have something like that snatched off of us. It's true. This has always been a safe country for the most part. Now, this is before the fighting started. Most of us have looked at each other and we have lamented what has happened to the other one. I'm not going to sit up here and act as though we've always been unified, but we also have not just been walking around being each other's enemies on sight right off the bat either. That's not the way that's going down. I met a Senegalese family, Wolof, and traveling with them was a lady whose first language was Lingala. That is spoken in the Congo. She was a Lingala speaking lady traveling with a Wolof speaking family. They're from miles apart, thousands of miles apart. But they were cool. She was part of their family. I didn't ask who married who or anything. What I wanted to state to you all is that we are not even as divided as we think that we are. And we never have been. And when you look at black folk that are Muslim, I've told you all many times before, we are really even less divided. When I've come across, and the Wolof that I met were very kind. They were glad to hear me tell them that those are one of my mother's ancestral peoples. My daughters were with me, and they even said, oh, yeah, our dad is homesick. The man said, where's home? And my older daughter pointed at them, not pointed one finger, but with her hand, she pointed at them. And she said, your home is what he's homesick for. She said, all my life since I've been born, he's been homesick. And they were happy to hear this. When I was on Hajj, it was a Mozambican that asked me something. I don't even understand it. But then he told his whole crew, let's ditch this dude. And they walked back. They were walking in the direction they weren't supposed to walk into to keep a distance from me. What was the reason? They all black. They didn't know I was. And they were pretty much saying, you ain't like us. Keep a distance. Now, I'm not bragging about them doing that. What I'm saying is that they were doing that because they were going to protect themselves. And he was going to do it aggressively. He was pretty much saying, he was the one that looked like he might have had a Portuguese ancestor recently. He was pretty much the one saying, I don't trust you. And I'll protect the rest of my people from you. He was doing exactly what I probably would have done if I was sitting up talking with a bunch of our folks and the white guys trying to get in good with us. I probably would have been, hold up, man. Let me suss you. Let me vet you first. Let me see what you about. Now I would have been a little more diplomatic, but I probably would have been, let me see what you about before the rest of them hang out with you. I probably would have done that. Because I would have been less, I would not have trusted someone that's not us to treat us as equals until I know them, till somebody can vouch for them. They didn't know me. No one could vouch for me. My Spanish was not clear enough or similar enough to Portuguese to make them understand. I was trying to figure out where they would recommend for a Spanish speaker to learn Portuguese well or quickly so that I could more easily communicate with Mozambican Muslims because I was meeting them on Hajj. So now I knew you had Muslims in Mozambique. That's what that was about. They didn't understand that. And maybe they understood it and I just didn't understand this question. What I saw, though, was the same thing from somebody from the opposite side of the continent, from Mali. I saw this from some brothers that were probably from West Africa or Jeddah or both. I saw this generally speaking across the board. I saw it from a black Saudi whose origin was Barnawi, and he was speaking the Barnawi language to his wife. I saw it from them. One of the non-black Saudis had to introduce me to a black Saudi whose last name is Ajabi, and that's a Soninke last name. But they're a Saudi family. From him, I met his brother, and his brother actually runs a show in Saudi Arabia, a religious, knowledge-based show. I didn't know I was meeting a celebrity that had been on TV. I had no clue. I told them, wait a minute, when I realized they were Soninke, I greeted them in Soninke. And I told him in Arabic, that's another one of my mother's ancestral people because the Creoles come from this particular corridor. The Wolof, the Bambara, the Malinke, the Soninke, also called the Serahuli, and their neighbors. These are the groups from whom the Creoles were taken mostly. I told him, and they gave me a hug. And the non-black Saudis that were sitting in the room, they actually kind of smiled in approval. And I saw one wipe his eye. I don't think he was shedding a tear, but it looked like he was wiping a tear away. What they saw was, okay, here's this African American that goes on Hajj. That we didn't know he was African, but here he goes on Hajj. We see him as an American. He meets his African Saudi brothers, and it's like a family reunion. How did I meet them? Because I was on Hajj. Now, we can sit up here and talk about the Arabs all day long. That's fine, but that's not the religion. Islam is not an Arab religion. At the time it was being revealed for the last time, the Arabs said that the religion of the Arabs was the worship of the 360 idols in the Kaaba, despite the fact that Abraham and his son Ishmael, peace be to them, built the Kaaba for the worship of one God alone with no others. Idols made their way in over time because of human beings. So the Arabs, who themselves believed that Abraham and his son had built the Kaaba for the worship of one God, put idols in there over time and said that this is the religion of the Arabs. You can't tell me Islam is the religion of the Arabs when they themselves describe their religion as a bunch of idol worship. They themselves will tell you, this ain't just our religion. We don't own it. Now, sometimes they'll act like they do. They'll act like they forget that. But if you tell them that their misbehaviors have led to others leaving Islam because they get sick of it, then they want to say, but it's not just our religion. And I'm like, yeah, the funny thing is how quick you are to say that when you realize that because you act like you own it other times, then you misbehave and someone leaves. Then you want to say, well, it's not our religion. It's everybody. Oh, okay. Well, you're right. But why does it take me to tell you that for you to say that? Any other time you're like, well, why don't you wear a thobe at least on Fridays? Because I'm not an Arab and the thobe is your dress and the ones you wear come from Persia. If I look like a black man imitating Persians, they started white supremacy before you got a hold of it. Why would I imitate them just because you do? If I'm going to wear a thobe, I wear a Sudanese thobe. It's better, more suitable for this climate anyway. Put the guck out my face with that sure bit. Black unity does not mean that I'm going to sit up and tolerate anybody from any particular language group that sits up and looks down on other black folks and talks about how ain't fit we are and then jumps on FBA when they get a chance. Not because we're the only ones that they insult, but then focuses on us because we're the first ones to fight back. See, this particular group has been dealing with others from their own country even that just leave them alone and avoid them and just don't mess with them like that on a deep personal level. They've been dealing with that. We start firing back. So they didn't want to focus on us because they're not capable of learning that they were wrong and they started this shit. Let's focus on that particular group that starts this stuff. Not on Africa as a whole and then by extension, the Caribbean. And yeah, there are going to be some of those who sit up and talk that mess, and they need to be smacked around verbally by us. That does not mean we celebrate when white folk come and pick them up and send them out of any part of the Americas to anywhere else. Who are white folks to tell anybody black not to be in the Americas? Any part. North, South, Central, the islands, wherever. Who are they to tell any of us that? That's when we got the right to say, hold up. We got this, Mr. Charlie. You can butt the uck out of this. It's an A and B conversation. The black family here is going to sort this out internally. They are more my people than a white American is. I said it. And I'm not even saying that because I just hate white Americans, even though I probably have a right to. I'm saying it because you know what? White Americans will tell you we got the same nationality, but we're not blood related. Those might be my blood relatives. The ones that Mr. Charlie and his grandsons are so happy to deport. Go ahead and deport whoever's in the country illegally or not. It doesn't really make a difference to me, except for however it influences and affects you. But if it does not help the ones that migrated to the states legally, then I'm not going to cheer you on when you grab the ones that are in the U.S. illegally. Now, if it helps the ones that are there legally, for you to grab the ones there illegally, then I would take sides because I'm still siding with somebody black that ain't causing trouble for anybody else, especially other black folk. But that's not what this is about. They're not sitting up and saying, well, let's go and grab this Jamaican over here because he's a sellout to his own people and he's a coon. And then he's a tether when he does something bad because he pretends to be African American. So nobody will know that it's actually someone that's not African American doing a shuck fit over it. That's not why they're grabbing him up. They're sitting up and saying, well, you couldn't keep up with this bureaucratic paperwork list that we gave you to stay in the country. And since you couldn't keep up with that, let's just go ahead and grab you and nab you up. That's what the hell that's about. Omar was right about one thing. As much as Omar Ifatunde Ungawa Johnson, Mr. Islam ain't black enough, is off the mark with a lot of stuff, as much as he is. One thing about which he was right is that the U.S. government does not go looking for the tamest, most white folk loving coons of any nationality to deport. They go looking for the militant, the ones with the fist in the air. They go looking for the Marcus Garveys. That's who. Because they know that they can't get rid of us, at least not easily, and we will accept those who are not sellouts. We big Marcus Garvey up. He had parades in the North, but the biggest subscriber base that he actually had was in the South. His magazines and his newspapers were subscribed to in the South by black folks. Southern Negroes. Ones we thought couldn't read. No, they were his biggest subscribers because they were in a climate already similar to back home. They were homesick. I know because I've grown up in the South and I'm still homesick. When the spring and the summer would come, boy, I'd be glad. And then I got old and read that, you know what, it's, and much of Africa is like this all year round. And I said, man, shuck this fit. I want to go home, if for nothing other than the weather. To this day, one of the songs that resonates with me the most is Bob Marley's song, Coming In From the Cold. I'm not the only one that has that mindset. I got to tell you, man, I really wish that this was more obvious, but my people, I've already taken 24 minutes to talk about the thing that I was going to take the less time to talk about. So I guess the other one's going to have to be another upload, and that's fine with me. I got to tell y'all, man, my people, most of them are not sitting up and saying that their culture is just superior to ours. And they've had a right to think it if it's going to be based on what they've seen on TV. But most of them, at the very least, when they've met some of us and really talked with us, they don't walk around thinking that. I've had to sit up and say this. I've had to tell some of them, look, you know what? That's not what we're about. Meaning, I've had to tell. What I mean is, I've had to tell some African Americans that that's what those of us who are proud to be African are not about. There was a time I thought that they might be culturally superior. I thought they might be, but I said before I assume either way, let me get to know them and find out. And I started getting to know them, and I realized that no, we're actually very similar in terms of what we do that's right, and in terms of how lost we are. We're actually quite similar. Weaves, wigs, and skin bleach and blue contact lenses. This is something that you see amongst African American women, Caribbean women, continental African women. That's where you see it. It's a black problem. It's not a black one nationality problem. We're one race with multiple nationalities. We're just not aware of it because since we're the oldest race, we have the least of a concept of race. We had to come across people obsessed with it in order for us to even maintain a solid concept of it. And now that many of us have had it, I'm actually proud. When I was on Hajj, I wasn't glad that I caused a sense of alarm amongst my own people whenever I spoke to us. I wasn't happy to do it. Eventually, I just felt the shuck up around my own people. I started just being silent because by me even seeming to pay a lot of attention to them, it seemed to set off some alarms. The Black Saudis wound up becoming the most neutral um, and the most receptive, ironically. And I'm okay with that. They didn't have anything to fear for the most part, especially the ones that were wearing any kind of uniform. I look at them and I think to myself, I'm glad to see that for the most part, our people were not playing around. I was glad to see that. I was glad to see that we weren't going to be so trusting of everybody else anymore, because what that meant to me was that we were going to start focusing more on alliances with each other and trusting each other and working with each other. I saw this shaping out in 2022. I know it had been in the making from before, but I could see it on Hajj in 2022. I could see it in 2023. I could see it in early 2024 when my son came to visit. I can see it now when I go into one of the restaurants where a Sudanese brother works and he and I give each other the Sudanese greeting. And the non-black Saudis look up and they see this and they're like, oh, wait a minute. That's a Sudanese greeting. And this non-Sudanese over here is, oh, okay. He's black, but from another country. I get it now. So this means that these black folks are sticking together. I remember when a Saudi that I thought was half black, I thought he was at least half black, marveled at this. And he even said to the Sudanese guy, you see, I told you, he loves black folks. I told you about him. And I turned to the man and said, of course I do. I'm black. And the Sudanese man said to him, yeah, he's telling the truth. I saw his son. When black folks are learning to cooperate with each other even more and better, and this has actually been something we tried to do throughout the generations and have done historically, or made efforts to do historically. I'm not about to sit up here and start making somebody else, some racist bastard, happy with an internal division, not one that doesn't exist, because if it exists, it exists, but by exaggerating one that exists and then applying it to everybody else that's somehow black, but not like us. I'm not doing that. On one hand, we're already diverse. You can't just roll us all up into one big Negro, as Dr. T.S. Johnson would say. But on the other hand, we can cooperate with each other against common enemies. That is something we can do, and we've done it before. Muhammad Duse Ali was an Egyptian Sudanese guy that actually, before the independence of Egypt or Sudan or Nigeria or Jamaica from the UK, wound up working in Nigeria for a while for an English language paper. Then he worked in London, and that's where he met Marcus Garvey. He was an actual anti-oppressor because that's part of our religion. A lot of y'all don't realize that. Oh, yes, Marcus Garvey got that revolutionary spirit from a Muslim. He took that. He didn't take the Islam with him. And you know what? If he wasn't convinced enough, then he should not have done so. But all of the self-determination and the cooperation between different black peoples and the common united front against oppressors and colonizers and imperialists, all of that came from a Muslim by the name of Muhammad Duce Ali, who later on did also spend some time in the USA. Yeah, that's real. An Egyptian Sudanese living in Nigeria. And to this day, Nigerian Muslims and Sudanese actually get along very well with each other. And did you guys know that Somalia has said that any Sudanese who can make it to Somalia can stay there and they're welcome? You think black folks can't cooperate? Oh, no, they can. They do. They've done it before. I saw the same Sudanese brother in a restaurant less than 2 hours before I'm recording this right now. I saw him there. I was like, yeah, man, how's the family doing with the fighting going on? Are they in a safe place? Because some states in Sudan are safe and some are not. He said, unfortunately, they're in White Nile State. The fighting goes off and on there. And I said to him, you know what? I heard that if they can manage to get to Somalia, they can stay there. And he said, you know what? That's right. Yeah, that's true. Because they love us and we love them. What? I thought black people hated each other. Sudanese and Somalis, when they can meet with each other, they get along with each other better than even Somalis might get along with other Somalis. The Sudanese would enjoy complete tribal and regional neutrality within Somalia. You thought it was just the Yemenis that settle in Somalia that live above the fray and live above all of the trouble. No, if you're black and you go there and you're Muslim, you can live above that. And they would look at the Sudanese and say, you know what? Y'all came from a fight. We understand. Hey, we got the longest coastline in Africa. You can start there. And we got room for you. And they don't speak the same language walking around on the streets like that. And as a matter of fact, some of them are related. Some of them have the common last name Darodi or Darud. Same family name. And here we are thinking the black folk just cannot possibly get along with each other, can't cooperate. So since we FBA, we should cheer when Massa grabs up any other black folks and kicks them out. I don't feel a guck what they've done if it ain't something horrible, egregious, and inhumane. Fool the hucker and white folk to do it. Maybe they have to. Maybe it's nothing personal. But cheering that on, what the hell for? We might breathe a sigh of relief when they pick up Latin Americans. Those are actually piss poor allies or enemies. They go back and forth because Latin Americans are not all the same. But when they start grabbing black folk that ain't had nothing to do with bothering us or insulting us or anything like that, there's no sigh of relief to breathe. They're not going after the ones that are bad for everybody else first. Unless they just have to, unless the paperwork's staring them in the face. No, they wouldn't do that. What they're doing is if they can do this, they'll do it like what Omar said they would. They're going to go for the more militant ones first. Ask me how I know, because one of the first ones to be deported in the 2010s was a friend of mine. And he didn't even know that he was not in the States legally. He'd been in the States from the time he was a child. He did not know that he was no longer legal to stay in the States. He had never broken any laws. They came and they picked that man up and said that he was a national security concern. No joke. He was getting in his car to go to work one morning, and they didn't even go into his house. They waited for him to go to work, and they nabbed him up. And he said, listen, if you feel like that, then go ahead and send me back to my home country where the Muslims are. Go on, send me back. I will agree. Just put me on a flight back. He found out it cost him $10,000 a month to house him. He said, I tell you what, $10,000 a month. I don't make $10,000 a month. Go ahead, send me back. You could have me back by the end of the week. And you could have me back before it's time for me to do my next load of laundry. And you don't have to spend that much on me. It's a win-win for all of us. That's what he told him. The next day, they sent the FBI agent in to come talk to him. And the FBI agent told him, listen, if you will monitor the mosques for us, then you can be out of here right now. And he told him, you mean spy on the Muslims for you? Ain't no Muslims doing or saying nothing around me that you would value anyway. So even if I agreed to do it, you would be picking me up a month from now because there's nothing to report. I'm already there. I'm already praying. Ain't nobody doing nothing except regular socializing, praying, a little more socializing, and then going home. That's what's going on. You wouldn't believe me if I told you the truth. I told you to put me on a plane back home. I said this already. You don't want me here? Fine. I was saving up to go home anyway. Now you're offering me a free flight back home. Out of spite, they kept that man 7 months and spent $70,000 to house him before they finally sent him back home. You want to know what this man was about? Oh, he wasn't even angry or aggressive. He wasn't, well, I'm sure he got angry at times, but he wasn't planning on harming anybody. He couldn't. He was going to the mosque. Everybody at the mosque knew they were being monitored and watched. I was. He knew what was going on. He just pretty much said, you got this two-party system over here. And every time you have to make a vote or cast an election, it's never one that's actually going to be for a solution. Solutions are never on the ballot. Whether it's you vote for somebody to put them in any office or they vote on a law, the solution is never on the ballot. Never mind. I'm saving up to go back home. And I recommend that African Americans pick a country, learn and see which one is best for them and go back to. That's what he used to say. So from him saying this, he was considered a national security threat. He pretty much said, the ones that are over here mistreating you are the same ones that colonized us over there. They're never going to treat either one of us fairly. So he was a national security threat in their eyes. He was not walking around saying you African Americans are culturally inferior and you're crap. Why? Because he knew that his people could be full of it too. No, we don't have any business celebrating their deportation unless you're talking about someone that's really, really, really pretty much by the time they could do something for which we would celebrate their deportation, they've done something so horrible that they shouldn't even be deported. They should be serving a sentence and probably sitting on death row, stateside. Or they did something back home that was so egregious that they're wanted and they get deported, so they're going to be picked up. It should be something like that. If we're going to set up and celebrate it, I'm not celebrating white folks picking up any of our folks and telling them to go anywhere. I wouldn't celebrate that in Europe. Why would I celebrate that in the Americas, another stolen land? Who are they? Leonard Peltier has the right to round Massa up and tell him, okay, you fit the guck out. Let's look at your last name and see where that's from. Okay, you're going to Scotland. You're going to the Netherlands based on your last name. You're going to Germany. You're going to Italy. But I'm not actually from there. Well, would you like a DNA test? Your ass fitting the guck out of here. That's who has the right to sit up and tell. And I don't even think they have the right to tell us to get lost because they know we didn't ask to go there. They know that. What they're going to do, blame us because somebody kidnapped us and dropped us off on their turf? And Mr. Sperling himself has said, no, we do descend from Africa genetically. Yeah, those are our people genetically. He himself said that. Okay, so now we agree on this. Why would I sit up here and take someone that was responsible for making that split profitable and then side with them? What are you going to say? Because we and whites have an understanding? Yeah, we have an understanding, all right. They're never going to stop mistreating us. Even if they stop doing it one way, they start to try to do it another way. Or if they want us to help them do it to somebody else, and it's never been worth it. No. We black. The world is our crib. And I'm not going to sit up. I don't want to see us alienate ourselves from other locations, especially those on our own continent. I'm already possibly going to be alienated from our home continent because I look untrustworthy. It's not something I did. It's something other people that kind of look like me either did or they were stereotyped to have done. I'm not going to be trusted on our home continent in certain parts. And I think that sentiment is going to grow and spread like feminism does. I know what that feels like. I got to sit up and plan my retirement off the continent because I can see the writing on the wall. Do you think I want you to go through the same thing where everywhere you go, you're alienated, continent or not? Everywhere where the weather's nice, you get alienated because they start to associate with you celebrating their deportations from the States. You may not care about places like Latin America and them saying don't come here either. Maybe you don't feel a guck. Okay, that's between you and Latin America because we know how they've acted. But what, the home continent? Is that what you want? You want to be alienated from there? Persona non grata, pretty much anywhere where you could understand the language? Told to stay the F out? We already know African American women have a rough time adjusting unless they stay single. And they don't adjust to that very well. We already know because of what they had and that was within their control. Do you want to be as non grata as they are? Because you got caught up in this foolishness? Remember when I mentioned to you, a lot of this black infighting is not really something that interests men. A lot of this is something that is something in which women have an interest in seeing so that we remain competitive the whole time they're sitting up at the hair salons talking to each other, comparing notes on how to take advantage of both of our asses. And when I say both, what I really mean is both sides of whatever argument, because it's really more than two parties of us. The Jamaican and the FBA woman sit up and compare notes on how to manipulate and take advantage of us. The Southern Nigerian woman and the African American woman and the Jamaican sit and compare notes about the same thing. They may want us to be in competition with each other, but they are not in competition. They're damn sure not in competition to sexually or any other way reward the most productive of black men of either one of their nationalities. If you're a nice guy and you're a Southern Nigerian or a Jamaican or you're African American, they see you as a damn target for paternity fraud. Here, nigga, raise this other guy's baby. Want us to delineate, so to speak, so that we don't compare notes. That's really what a lot of that is about. And I'm for delineation in terms of distinction, being aware of distinctions, because that's being aware of an actual diversity that accurately, objectively does exist. I'm fine with that. You can appreciate the whole if you appreciate more of its parts and how they work together. But that's not what they're about. They want a delineation with an unnecessary division so that as they sit up and compare notes in the hair salons we pay them to go to, we don't sit up and compare notes with each other. No, I let those Nigerian men, I let them talk. Even the Southern Nigerian men. I steer the conversation a little bit to how they get treated by their women. I don't ask what games do you play on your women, because they don't get to play games. No, what games are they playing on you? That's what I ask. I don't ask them about what games do you Jamaican men play on your women. I don't ask them that. Because we already know that when they do get a DNA test, a large percentage of them are raising a baby that they think is not theirs. One man flipped out and took his wife out because all the babies he thought were his were not his. That pretty much means she sat up and said, every time, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat with some other man whose babies I don't mind having, and then I'm going to screw him. He thinks the baby's his, and he'll raise them. But his genes are inferior. I don't want them. That's what the hell this is. She's pretty much saying, I'm going to overextend my womb with other men's DNA because I don't want to bear his, but I want him to raise them at his expense. That is hateful. 6 of them, that's not an accident. She can't stand that man's genetically, she can't stand him. But she with him, so he'll raise 6 kids for other men. That's the end of it. So I'm sitting up looking at this and thinking, whoa. So I see a pattern here. Being harsh on the men, harsh attitudes towards the men, paternity fraud, hyper materialism, hyper scrutiny, reading too much into everything the man does, lack of communication, no benefit of the doubt when it comes to any of these men. This is something that these broads have in common. And still they want us fighting. They want us at each other's throats, but they're sitting in these hair salons comparing notes. Get all the way the F out my face with that short bit. Yeah. I mentioned that before. So if it's a bunch of sellouts and coons that are being picked up and deported, then that's better for those of their own nationality that are not sellouts and coons, and for us. That's fine. Okay, get rid of them. Yeah, sure. Send them somewhere else. And even then, I feel bad for their countries that got to take them back. Not sure I'm going to celebrate it even then. But this blanket, unnuanced celebration of just black folks that are not FBA being picked up and kicked out. No, man. What if they didn't do anything and they're actually being discriminated against just for being black? Since they're immigrants, they can be targeted for deportation and they ain't done nothing. What happens if that goes on? Even if Trump didn't order it like that. Suppose that winds up being the case. You know how these folk act. We actually have to look out for stuff like that. I said a long time ago. But Jay Smart, I remember you saying that you were born in the wrong generation. To be honest with you, man, I don't think there was a right one. I don't think there really was one at all, because by virtue of us being raised by the hyenas and their anti-intellectualism, all generations of us have had one thing have had one problem up until recently, up until the current one. We've all suffered from this NUITL psychosis, not until it's too late. This refusal to grow the on time. We've all had that. We don't mature until it's too late. We don't start analytically thinking about the games that these broads play on us until it's too late. Some of us won't even accept Islam or whatever religion you're going to actually accept that you at least you believe works for you. Won't even think about how to live a morally coded life until it's too late. Now you can be as moral as you want to be, but you're never going to be able to own a house or get your life stable because you waited until it's too late. You had to go and do a 20-year bid and then get out of prison damn near in your 40s and start all over before you had any kind of moral code. Oh man, I wish I'd had this when I was younger. Dumbass, you had the chance. But you weren't trying to impress these hyena bitches. Of course you weren't going to have a chance then. You had a chance to accept it, but you didn't stand a chance of actually accepting it because you were going to sit up here and try to follow behind this broad instead of just looking at women of other orientations and cultures and say, you know what, if I don't have to impress this bitch by robbing banks, let me go talk to her and holler at her. Oh hell, actually she's coming and hollering at me because she digs brothers like that. Let me listen to what she got to say because Boom Chica over here ain't got nothing but some booty and some attitude. And got the nerve to say I'm a sellout if another woman walks up to me. I don't think that any generation was really the right one, except maybe this current one, honestly, Jay Smart, because they're the ones that are sitting up and saying right now in their teens, we're going to analytically think about this stuff. Matter of fact, we're not even making approaches. And that's what I'm going to go into in the next topic. But that's going to be another recording to come because this is already 52 minutes long. Thank you all for being patient with me. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Black Hat, Assalamu Alaikum, Black Heterosexual, Non-Select Male Power, because they don't like it in Black Patriarchy until extinction or Judgment Day. And thanks again to S Jacques for coming through on that Cash App, and Gail and Malika Mebane for coming through yesterday. Thanks again from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. And the rest of y'all, don't let a few people carry all the weight. I'd much rather have most of you sending in one or two that hear this than to have a few people sending in anywhere from 5 to 100. I'd much rather that. Thank you for flying with us here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase Jet Black's also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.